Hey, this is Jordan with TYT Politics, coming to you from a terribly lit hotel room, about the best I could do. I'm here with Tangerine Bolen. Did I botch how to pronounce it? Okay.
Nope, you got it.
Great. And, my producer told me about the lawsuit you and your group are planning on filing. You've actually been on the Young Turks before, had some legal success. And you plan on putting forward a lawsuit against Dakota Access Pipeline. Obviously, there's many lawsuits out there right now, but I think yours is a little bit unique. So first, tell me about your group, what you've done in the past, and kind of the nuts and bolts about your current case that you want to put forth.
Sure. So I founded Revolution Truth in late 2010 when former Attorney General Eric Holder signaled an incredible willingness to gut the First Amendment in the administration's zeal to go after Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Depending on which side of the aisle, you may love or hate Julian at this point, but I started a group basically to defend WikiLeaks' right to publish, and I still would defend that no matter my disagreements with him as a person. And from there, we did a campaign for WikiLeaks. We did a campaign for Chelsea Manning. But we were kind of trying to find our footing. We were civil liberties and human rights oriented. And what we did is create something called legal campaigns. And that's essentially a hybrid of global grassroots activism and lawsuits against either government entities, nation states, or giant corporations that are abusing their power. Specifically the human rights and civil liberties fronts. But so legal campaigns are essentially, our motto is we crowdsource justice. And that's because none of us on our own can afford to do a lawsuit. They're very expensive. They're hard to do. But they're two different animals, global grassroots advocacy and lawsuits. So there was a really big learning curve for us, but also for our members and audience and supporters. So we went through a lot together, and we sued the government in a major civil liberties case in 2012. So
how did that play out?
Well, so that case was called Hedges v. Obama. A lot of your listeners will probably know about that case. It was against a provision in the National Defense Authorization Act. That year, unfortunately, our Democrat president signed into law this bill that allows for the indefinite detention of anyone anywhere, including American citizens, likely on U.S. soil. The provision over which we sued had two paragraphs that are so incredibly broad and vague, and phrases within those paragraphs that have absolutely no legal precedent. So they conferred completely boundless powers to the executive, which means President Trump now has the right to indefinitely detain any of us based on secret evidence that we are somehow associated with terrorists, and associated is not defined anywhere in the law. So we sued. It was Chris Hedges, former New York Times Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, Noam Chomsky, Daniel Ellsberg, Birgitta Jonsdotter from Iceland, the parliamentarian, and Lexa O'Brien, independent journalist, and Kaya Morgala from Occupy London, who worked with me. And then myself and my org were also plaintiffs. And we took them on in court in Manhattan, and we won handily in the first round. The judge issued a 150-page ruling excoriating the United States government because what they were doing was so profoundly unconstitutional and dangerous. We then lost, though, in the Second Circuit, and the Supreme Court declined to take our case, which is pretty par for the course. But I imagine we're going to have that case come up again. Hopefully not. I'm being a little cynical here, but it's quite possible at the rate we're going that we could have to file again under the Trump administration. So we will.
I would say it's pretty much definite. So
yeah, just can I say one quick thing on that, because it's actually pertinent to Standing Rock in a roundabout and very tragic fashion. President Obama's attorneys actually said outright in a court of law that both journalists and activists could indeed be indefinitely detained under this law based on secret evidence, and denied access to the Fifth Amendment, to due process. And even worse than that, when Judge Forrest granted us a temporary worldwide injunction against this provision, and then we came back 3 months later, she asked the United States government attorneys if the military had abided by the injunction, and they refused to confirm or deny whether they had done so. So the United States government was essentially probably in contempt of court, but that never went anywhere because people like the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post refused to send reporters to cover this case that was so monumental and that still most Americans don't know about, which is shameful. So thanks for giving me a chance to run through that before we talk about Standing Rock, because it does segue into this.
And if people want to just Google that case, since nobody covered it, it's Hedges
v. Obama, but we built a dedicated site called stopndaa.org.
Great.
And if you like to get into nerdy legal filings, it's a pretty astounding 150-page read. It's actually amazing. So
nerds out there, now you know how. So before I ask you the next question, I just want to kind of set the scene. I've been back at Standing Rock.
Sure.
I've been back at Standing Rock now for a week. This is my 6th time here. The majority of coverage I've done has been mostly on the live, real-time standoffs between police, oil police, I call them, and water protectors. But this week I've had a chance to really, go to a couple court hearings and look into a lot of the cases here. And really what you see here is just your cardboard cutout railroading of innocent people. I mean,
yes.
One case is a water protector who's being charged with terrorism for the crime of trying to get a DAPL worker to put down his AR-15 after that worker was speeding through the road. Another one's being charged with reckless endangerment for ramming that same DAPL worker off the road as he was speeding and about to run someone over. That DAPL worker not charged with anything. Another one is being charged, I don't know the exact charge, but I saw an ATF officer on the stand say that this individual, Michael Marcus, admitted to pouring gasoline. The only problem with that is there's no proof that he admitted that. There's no transcript.
That's correct. There's
no transcript, no audio. And from what I've been told, and speaking with people who know him, he did not admit that. And I mean, it would take us forever to go into every case, but this is what we're dealing with. Just the other day, in response to a new camp opening up on, they call it private land, they are charging Chase Iron Eyes, Vanessa Castle, with inciting a riot. If your definition of a riot is peacefully praying on the side of the road. So the reason I'm going through all this is because people really need to understand that this is like a dystopia. This isn't even like America. This is kind of like some dystopian nightmare or like some movie where the law is just doesn't exist. So with all that said, what's your lawsuit planning to do? What's the mechanism that you think it could be successful? And what are your thoughts just in general about the injustice that's happening here?
Let me start with the latter first because that segues into the lawsuit as well. Just so you know, Michael Marcus was actually one of the first people who wanted to be a plaintiff with us. And I found it really interesting that he was then charged. I mean, I'm not claiming any connection there, but what I will say is that person after person that we have spoken with, just like you, has dealt with such egregious abuses, intimidation, threats, harassment. I mean, the most bizarre and scary things happening to them. I mean, time after time after time, that it's clearly a pattern. We don't have the resources on our own as a group to go after that at this moment, but we certainly will through this lawsuit. So that said, the lawsuit itself, nobody is bringing this forward but our group, and it's kind of shocking that hasn't happened. We're quite happy to do it, and we're quite prepared to do it. We actually have a fantastic legal team. It's part of our team from the 2012 case. This case would be rooted in environmental injustice and racial discrimination. Those are two of the claims. So essentially, this pipeline rerouting was an arbitrary rerouting from majority white Bismarck outside the north end of Bismarck onto these contested treaty lands. And that is a clear case of both environmental injustice and racial discrimination. On the environmental front, as you know, as anyone who's been paying attention knows, this pipeline poses a grave danger to the sole water source for around 13 tribes, and multiple tribes that are a party to the Fort Laramie Treaty. It also potentially poses a danger to upwards of 20 million people. This is the worst route possible for this pipeline, environmentally speaking. We actually have a mechanical engineer who's working with us and is, going to be testifying for us pro bono, because he actually builds pipelines just like this. And he is absolutely horrified by this route. He's suggesting an alternate route if the pipeline absolutely has to go through. But the point is that putting this pipeline 92 feet under the ground under Lake Oahe is the worst possible thing this company could do. So environmentally, from the water perspective, obviously it is a grave, grave danger. It's also a scar upon these lands. These are sacred treaty lands, sacred tribal lands, and this is an arbitrary routing of this pipeline across these people's lands. These lands have an enormous historical, religious, and spiritual significance to all of these tribes. So this is also a case of racial discrimination. Having this arbitrary rerouting going from largely white Bismarck to without any real assessment of what could happen. As we know, the EIS is in the courts right now. So these people really had no say in this pipeline being rerouted. And they, as you know, are a largely more vulnerable population. There's a lot of intergenerational trauma, historical trauma, marginalization, deep poverty, serious hardship. This is a population that this country has assaulted for hundreds of years. And this pipeline company just expected to plop a pipeline down on these lands and threaten, and destroy at whim. And so this is a clear case of both of those two things, environmental injustice and racial discrimination. And we have a plaintiff from the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, an absolutely lovely person. I'm not going to name them now because I'm a little worried about them. And we also have a plaintiff from the Pine Ridge Lakota tribe. We're welcoming anyone else who would like to join this suit. They have to be a member, a standing member of one of the tribes that's impacted. But we would welcome anyone to join us. So right now we have two very strong plaintiffs, and we really want to stop this pipeline based on their claims. So
I want to get back to the lawsuit, but I want to point something out that I don't think has
been
pointed out. I don't think it was so arbitrary to reroute this to the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. I think that if you connect the dots, along with pipelines like this, you usually see a lot of fracking wells that are built along. And native reservations are known to have a hell of a lot of oil. So, yes, this pipeline originally was supposed to go to Bismarck. That's documented. But I don't think, the energy company just kind of, threw gum on a wall and said, we'll do it an hour away on the native land. I think it was a strategic measure. You put that along with the fact that now in North Dakota, there's a bill being put forth with flowery language for essentially the state to take over reservations, which is, in my view, a ploy to drill. So,
of course,
it's environmental racism, but it's also just straight up corruption and greed.
Predatory capitalism.
Right, and I think if that goes through in North Dakota, you take over reservations here, that's really a blueprint for the rest of the country, and we certainly have a president who doesn't have a problem with that. So, bigger picture, more than just DAPL, is there any legal mechanism to show that, yes, it's about racism, but it's also, an illegitimate effort to break, further steal land from the natives?
Yes, it is. And to your point, when I say arbitrary, I think I'm speaking more from the perspective of the tribes and tribal members, that it feels arbitrary to them. You're absolutely right. Technically speaking, I don't think it was arbitrary either. I think it was very strategic. I agree that your premise is quite plausible. It's absolutely worth pursuing. It's absolutely worth pursuing to the point of trying to stop that, because it's not just a blueprint. It would set a legal precedent. So, there are many lawsuits in play right now. There aren't any coming at it from this direction of looking at this as environmental injustice and racial discrimination. There's a third piece to this. This is that we are looking to strengthen and restore some sovereign rights here, sovereign powers. we're doing that in a fashion that's kind of unique because these tribal members are dual citizens. They're sovereign citizens of their tribal nation. They're also citizens of the United States. And as sovereign citizens of their tribal nation, they do not recognize the authority of the United States government, and certainly not a $25 billion private corporation, to put this pipeline onto their sacred treaty lands, tribal lands. We aim to go to court with those declarations in hand that they do not recognize this authority of the United States government to arbitrarily further diminish their sovereignty as they have just done with the rerouting of this pipeline. So that segues right into what you were saying, because there's no guarantee, there's never a guarantee that you win in these cases, and we need a lot of help. I mean, I just want to put that out to the public. We can't do this on our own. We're all volunteer. These cases cost tens of thousands of dollars. You know, we're an ad hoc, scrappy, informal group, but we are so determined. So, but what I was going to say is that these take a lot of resources, but if we can win this, and we certainly have very strong claims to make, including on the sovereignty front, we can actually set a precedent in the reverse by using the rule of law, using the court system in a strategic fashion, not a pie-in-the-sky, academic, way out there fashion, like I've heard floated around Standing Rock in the last few months, but really using the court system itself, the legal precedents themselves, to actually gently, subtly, but distinctly strengthen sovereign rights. We could stop this pipeline, and we could set that blueprint for future pipelines where this plan, where they're planning on just what you've described. So this is a 3-part case, and really all I need to do, all my team needs to do, is raise about 20 to 25 grand, which is nothing in the scheme of things. But as your producer probably told you, I'm dealing with a traumatic brain injury and a serious health condition, and so we're all kind of limping along. I basically got out of bed, having been in bed the last few years, to sue for Standing Rock, because you were saying a couple of things that made me remember or realize that we all feel that what happens at Standing Rock, it sets a blueprint going forth on so many fronts. Not just the construction of pipelines and fracking issues, fracking freedoms, but whether a $25 billion or multi-billion-dollar corporation can so easily, so facilely get away with these egregious, widespread civil liberties and human rights abuses as they have done at Standing Rock, because the mainstream media can't be bothered to get down there and actually do proper reporting on this. We're relying on people like you to get our news, and thank goodness for you, but we need the whole world to pay attention again. Standing Rock isn't over. And Standing Rock, if we win at Standing Rock, we can set the tone for many, many things that happen under the Trump administration. If we lose here, it's the opposite. There isn't more of this is the apex battle. If all the millions of people who came out for those marches, the Women's March, could turn their attention back to Standing Rock and see these are some of the most vulnerable populations in the country. There are indigenous people, and they have done this uprising out of prayer and nonviolently, as you know, Jordan. And so, it doesn't get. I'm sorry, I don't need to go on and on, but I'm really passionate about this because it doesn't get more critical, more beautiful, or more terrible than what has happened at Standing Rock. So we need to win.
Last question, just nuts and bolts logistics.
Sure.
Listen, I've been here 6 times. I have a good sense of how things go. It's quite possible they're going to grant the final easement within the next week, 2 weeks. It's quite possible, Trump could throw in some muscle, send some troops in here. So time would be of the essence. How, if you're filing a lawsuit and a permit might be approved within the next week or two, once that permit's approved, it's like, if they're not already drilling, which I haven't been able to confirm, but they're ready to drill, that pipeline, they could be drilled under that water pretty quickly. How does it look? How does your lawsuit get heard in that immediate time frame?
Yeah, we file an emergency injunction to stop that. And we would actually file at least one, if not on multiple fronts, to stop that. So we are completely prepared to do that. And as I said, we have multiple people who are ready to testify as expert witnesses for us pro bono, environmental and mechanical engineers, as well as our plaintiffs, who are both amazingly strong folks. So no, let's not get too pessimistic here, because Trump doesn't have the right to grant the easement legally. I know he doesn't really care about those things necessarily, but we would absolutely challenge it. That would be arbitrary and capricious under a legal standpoint. So if he were to, disregard this environmental impact statement and try to force an expedited easement, we would absolutely go to court immediately. So we just need the public's help. Again, we've got a couple fundraisers going, and it really should not be hard to raise 25 grand, and we believe we can. But again, we're a pretty scrappy team, and some of us work full time, some of us have disabilities, and just like all of us in this day and age who actually give a damn about these things, we're working collaboratively. We're putting our strengths and skills together to fight this thing. We're David and Goliath, and I think we can win, but we have to work, all of us, together. So.
So if people want to donate, obviously they could look at your previous cases. How would they be able to help support you?
Yeah, so there are two ways to find our fundraisers. One is a GoFundMe, and the title is Stop DAPL, Stop Trump. You can just find it there. The second is on our scrappy old website, revolutiontruth.org. And my apologies to your viewers that I haven't been around in a while. Those who know me know why. But there's a PayPal donate button there. And you can also, again, check out our former legal work at stopndaa.org. So we've done some really great things. And despite the fact that I've been sick for a while, we were recently invited to speak to present our work in France before the World Forum for Democracy, because it's so promising. This idea of crowdsourcing justice, that we don't have to do it alone, with the public's help. It's kind of like a more grassroots ACLU. We can really plug in and target these kinds of issues and not give up. I mean, unfortunately, the ACLU was at Standing Rock for a minute, but I think they were kind of elbowed out a little bit, perhaps. But they're not there anymore, as far as I know. And, those folks on the ground, they don't have enough help. And although we don't do individual representation, this DAPL, Energy Transfer Partners, is absolutely relying on the fact that they're strategically going after all of these people. And they're relying on the fact that the needs are so great, the circumstances so dire, that everybody's focusing on individual arrests while nobody stops the pipeline. And that's the plan. So we need to stop the pipeline, and we can do both. If we can get this case in court, we can also go after more funds to more adequately get defense for those people on the ground who aren't adequately represented. So we don't want to leave anyone behind. If we can manage it.
So, last thing I'll say is two things. Number one, I think this gets lost because, like you said, the media, isn't here. I'm doing my best.
You're doing amazing.
Thank you. But this company, Energy Transfer Partners, was recently bought by a company called Sunoco Logistics. Sunoco Logistics tops the charts of crude oil spills in the United States of America. So when the company and their bought-off politicians like Hovind say all the extra precautions are put in and world-class steel, I mean, data is data. We see now, every other day I see another oil spill here, another oil spill here. There was one 2 hours away, 176,000 gallons. So this is not, people still need to remember, it's not if, it's when the pipeline burst.
Absolutely.
And the second thing I will say is, I think that sometimes the media doesn't cover something because, environmental movements aren't sexy. But this story is not really just an environmental movement. This is like the mixed salad bowl of everything. You got the environmental angle, you got the corruption, you got the bought-off politicians, you got the trying to the sovereign rights, you've got the trying to seize more land. There's a whole big bowl of things. So I think people in supporting you or whoever they support need to realize, yes, water is the number one thing. We can't ignore that. But there's a lot more at stake than just water here. So thank you.
It's true. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And, we would love, I don't know what your schedule looks like, but if you'd ever like to interview our plaintiffs and our attorney, we'd be available to you. So we would love to continue this discussion and continue this fight. I think we need each other in order to do this. So really appreciate what you're doing, Jordan.
We'll keep in touch. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.